Hey everyone, welcome back to the PAC-South podcast. After a brief break, we are once again back. We have some developments. Last episode, I talked about how we were kind of playing with a new playoff format. They have made a decision on that. We're just jumping right into that. Pat, you weren't on that show. What are kind of your thoughts on the potential expansion going forward, and did they get it right for like these next 2 years?
Yeah, I think at least for the short time, I think 12 is a good number to stay at. The two 12-team playoffs that we've had have been extremely entertaining. You had a really good run out of Ohio State last year to win the national championship after people kind of wrote them off following that performance against Michigan. You had Notre Dame kind of resurrecting their name in national circles a little bit by finally getting over that hump, winning a New Year's Six Bowl for the first time in decades and making the national championship. And then this year, you've got obviously pretty much the biggest story we've had in the playoff era with Indiana winning the national championship, but also Miami reasserting itself among, we'll say, like the top tier or the elites of college football. So I really do feel like 12 is kind of a good number to be at right now. I think if we go out to 16, um, you're probably not watering down the product too much. So it's not like an issue of competitiveness, like some people might argue or say at that point. But for me, I feel like expanding to 16 just creates bigger issues around the schedule, which is already a problem. Um, I mean, we've seen these first 2 years how much having that big gap between a conference championship game and then that second round of games or the first neutral site games can really have on the teams that get a bye. Um, and I don't know. I just feel like mid January is super, super late to be having college football wrap up. At that point, you're kind of competing with the NFL because they've got playoffs ramping up. Obviously, down south, college football is king, but in other regions, the NFL vastly outweighs the college audience. So I feel like the NCAA and the committee sort of have to figure out how they want to handle these things, right? I mean, obviously, adjusting to transfer portal requirements was a huge bonus there, that it will help. However, I still feel like we have to iron out, all right, are we going to protect Army Navy? Because there's a lot of talk about not, we'll say, honoring that anymore, right? And sort of shifting Army Navy to either the beginning of the year or like a Labor Day game, something like that, instead of having it be the last week of the season so it can still be standalone. But there's not that gap between conference championship, first round, second round of the CFP. But also, I think kind of like player safety becomes an issue when we get into that conversation as well. Because if you're on a team that has an early bye, it can get a little bit dicey in terms of how many hits you're taking in such a condensed period of time, especially if your team goes on, a deep run and stuff like that. So I get it from the optics of like revenue sharing, from the optics of, we'll say, like increasing access. I'm sure that's an argument that the ACC would be putting forward. I'm sure that's an argument that some of our G5 conferences would be putting forward. But I think we're kind of at the sweet spot right now with 12. I know you and I have talked off the podcast, and I kind of feel like, I don't know, despite how great these games have been, like it almost feels like we're still risking the importance of certain regular season games by having it be so large of a field and having it be 12. And I feel like if you bring it out to 16, that really diminishes the impact of, a top 5 matchup or a top 10 matchup, because you can lose one or two of those games. But if you're in a high ranked conference like the Big Ten, like the SEC, let's say we see the Big 12 continue on this upward trajectory, something like that, you can lose two of those games and still be in, because you can say, well, I lost to the number 2, the number 7 team in the country. How can you leave me out over X or Y team who hasn't played anybody? Like you'll get into those hypothetical arguments where the SEC will always come out on top. But I think we're good at 12. And I'd be hesitant to expand further than that because even with college basketball and those calls to expand, I feel like 68, which is where we're at right now for college basketball, is kind of perfect, right? We can't trim it back down and eliminate those play-in games at this point. They're usually pretty good entertainment as well. Um, but I think expanding too much also compromises the integrity of the product.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think by the time you factor in like the numbers, I believe it's like around 18 to 20% of college basketballs who can make the field. Right now, I think it's now up to 12%, I want to
Yeah.
say, for college football. But those are two completely different sports. If you were to get it to the same level, like, yeah, you would have uniformity across multiple sports for college athletics. But I don't really think it's answering the same question at the same
Yeah.
time. You mentioned kind of the schedule is an issue. I'm pretty sure, I don't remember if it's next year or the year after, the national title was announced to be on January 25th. I feel like that is going to create more issues than what we already have with like these teams that get bye weeks. There's so much time in between games. They lose their game shape. Um, Injuries could become a part because then like you're not conditioning and training the same way. Your body kind of relaxes and then you go, I mean, it's not just you're off on a bye week and then you're playing Furman. It's you're off on a bye week and then you're playing, a top five team. So like you got to be ready to go immediately. So Indiana, the only team to win off of a bye week, I would not be shocked to see like the similar win percentage persist. Maybe one team from a bye week wins, or maybe none win at all again, like the first year.
Yeah.
Um, would not be surprised there. There are two more things I want to discuss on college football before we go to basketball, both kind of dealing with NIL. The first one, we will go back to South Florida with Miami. They go get Darian Mensah from Duke, proven winner, but little bit of controversy there. And obviously, we had the Damon Williams saga with Washington. He ends up going back. But now Darian Mensah, they end up deciding to release him, and then he goes to Miami immediately. What are your thoughts on this? And are there ways for these schools to combat this?
Yeah. I don't love the whole Mensa leaving thing. And my issue, and I've voiced this before on the podcast. I'm friends with a few people who are like pretty big Duke fans, and they kind of have passed this along to me. It's not the fact that Mensa tried to get out of the contract and tried to transfer to a conference team. It's the fact that he did it on literally the last day of the portal. So I think it's one of those situations where you want to make sure that you are upholding kind of like the agency of the players to be able to move and be able to earn for themselves and things like that. But also, you want to make sure that they're entering into contracts that are binding in some ways and don't necessarily let this become the Wild West, right? Because technically, Darian Mensah was under contract with Duke for this upcoming season. Ultimately, they reached a buyout, and that's kind of what finally settled it. But I don't know. What do you do if a school has ironclad contract in there that doesn't include a buyout, right? Like, who's on the hook for this money if the NCAA upholds their decision to transfer? Like, does the school get it back? Does the player have to forfeit a portion of his new NIL deal, right? Like, where's this offset of assets coming from? Because that's kind of what we're turning players into at this point. They're almost assets for the school and
Yeah.
for the brand of the school, right? And now they can profit off how good of an asset they are, which is great for them. Um, but I don't know. I think we're going to really have to delve deeply into the contracts that these players are signing, making sure that the players understand what they're signing, right? So that they're not confused when they try to hit the portal and maybe are faced with some resistance. And B, I think we really need to do a better job of vetting. I'm not saying this in like the case of Mensa, but it's just in general, vetting the people who are representing our athletes, right? Like some of these people actually are legitimate lawyers who understand contract law, who understands some of the we'll say nuance in the phrasing of these deals. And then others are just people who are trying to get rich quick, right? So they're going to encourage their players or their represented individuals to enter the portal as many times as possible so that they can keep, making money for themselves, but also get that kickback for the quote unquote agent. So I feel like we need to do a better job regulating our agents and do a better job, I'll say, explaining to players, um, like what's in their contract, under what conditions can they leave, under what conditions can't they leave. So we don't see more situations like Darian Mensah or like Damon Williams, who literally signed a contract and then the next week was trying to get out of it. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
We got to have something a little bit stricter and a little bit more binding.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it is the Wild West right now. I almost want to say they should kind of go backwards in a sense in like the transfer portal like processes, and like maybe make tiers to it. Because essentially, right now the transfer portal is, if you're familiar with soccer market for any of us or anyone listening, I mean, you kind of just go, okay, I like this guy, I'm going to get it, or like go pay for him for a transfer clause
Mm-hmm.
when it's the litigation is really not like spelled out that way right now.
Yeah.
But like that's essentially what's going on. You can then tie it back to the old transferring style of, the NCAA, you got to sit out a year, all that stuff. Maybe you get around that if you want to go like pay a transfer fee for someone in like, hey, if you even want to go like, or if you want to like confirm this with the NCAA and you want him to pay for your team next year. So Miami would go Darian Mensah's buyout with Duke, his contract at Miami,
Mm.
and like let's say maybe like $1 million fee for the NCAA. Like the
Yeah.
NCAA just gets the $1 million for certifying
Negotiating.
Miami's
Yeah.
transfer and like this transaction. I feel like that's a great way to kind of lessen the blow. You will still have things like this happen, but when you have, you know, you're going to have teams then put bigger buyouts on their guys.
Yeah.
Um, you're going to have the NCAA's fee on top of that. So it's like, all right, well, I want a $800,000 receiver. Well, for me to go get him out of his contract, it is going to cost me, you know, let's say 500K for the buyout from the other school, $1 million with the NCAA, and then $800,000 once he's in house. So he's no longer an $800,000 receiver. He's over $2 million. If I
Yeah.
did math right, yes. Um, little scare for a second. So then it really becomes a massive investment to go get these guys. So it's not going to remove these like situations from college sports, but it's going to make it a lot more rare and a lot more deliberate when schools are doing it. And I think that is how we can like kind of tone it down and in a way fix it.
Yeah.
Will that happen? Probably nowhere near in the future, probably a couple years at least, but just my thoughts.
And really quickly before we move on, since you kind of mentioned the role of the NCAA, I feel like they also have to, let's say, step in a little bit here as the governing body, and put into place perhaps some rules like the NFL has surrounding contact periods for players, right? Like the NCAA technically has a time where you can and cannot contact players, but as we've seen, when players enter the portal literally the first day with a do not contact tag, they know where they're going, right? So these guys have been tampered with. And if that happens in the NFL, there's ramifications. So I feel like the NCAA kind of has to step in, set conditions or set penalties for tampering, especially when there's clear cut evidence. And I think that would reduce some of this to an extent.
Totally agree. And then our last college football topic, this was posted about 24 hours ago, and this is, I think, more of a fun thing, but maybe in a couple weeks it's more reality. Mr. Beast posts on his story, a repost that is of should Mr. Beast do a $100 million donation to ECU for them to win a national title for a video. Obviously, the video part is very much Mr. Beast and makes it a little less serious, but that doesn't take away the fact of he's tied to ECU. He has been his whole life, kind of grew up in that area. Um, someone like that stepping into a mid-major program, like $100 million, you can put a
A
pretty
lot
good
of
roster
money.
together.
Yeah.
Pretty good roster together. So does that kind of like nullify the Power Four and Group Five conferences when you have that much money going to a mid-major? Because ECU, I mean, if there's that much money behind the program, behind that team, the guys that might be like, all right, I'm going to leave after the season because we played really well and there's more money. Well, the money's at home.
Yeah.
So how does that change the landscape of college sports if something like that were to happen and say ECU does not move conferences?
Yeah, I think it would be huge. I think it'd kind of be similar to like what Mark Cuban did with Indiana, where he was just like, look, I want to be on the, let's say, side of a winner. So Indiana athletic department, Kirk Cignetti, tell me what I need to give you, like give me a number, I'll provide it. And especially for a team that's in the American and really competing in a fairly recruit rich state in North Carolina, that would be huge for them. Not just getting kids out of high school, but then keeping talent, pulling guys maybe from like lower power fours who put up really good numbers, or perhaps guys that are highly ranked recruits and don't really see as much playing time as they'd like at an Ohio State or an Oregon,
Sure.
or a Texas, and then you're saying, all right, well, come over here, we'll still treat you fairly. We'll give you a decent NIL deal. You'll get on the field right away. We're going to compete, obviously, in the American with that kind of money. And you're going to have the chance to play for a conference championship and a national championship, like really get your name out there as a national player and a household name. And granted, like there are some schools out there that still would be able to poach some of your like top tier guys away, just because of the insane money that they have. But if you're
Sure.
getting
Yeah.
100 mil from Mr. Beast to build a roster, that's a dang good football team. And I don't know if I was, let's say, Duke or North Carolina or NC State or even like South Carolina, right? I'd be a little bit worried about what that kind of money could do, in terms of portal guys and obviously in terms of getting kids out of high school.
Yeah, it would throw the whole region like kind of on its head. So obviously more of a fun topic right now, but I mean, we give it a few weeks. I guess if he's thinking about it and he talks to his manager, it's like, hey, manager, it's going to be a lot of views, and they go for it. Next thing you know, college football is kind of flipped on its head on the East Coast and American Conference.
Yeah.
So could be fun to watch, or possibly concerning with the new precedent that would be. Nonetheless, we will now leave college football for the day and move over to our basketball. Last episode, I said that we would give you some updated standings, and we have them. In the men's standings, our new top three in the conference, or I should say, same 2 out of 3. Duke running away with it. They look amazing this year, and our conference criteria is certainly backing that up. They are by and far the best team in the conference, followed by Iowa State making another appearance in the top 3, and Florida. Florida has really gotten it together. Florida fans, I know, have been very upset with this team up until a few weeks ago. They thought they were dead. They thought the SEC schedule was going to kill them, and the opposite has happened. They really like hit SEC play and they turned it on, and now the Gators top 3 of our conference and playing very good basketball, now nationally ranked as well. And then our bottom 3 for the conference, and this probably shouldn't be of any surprise: Charlotte, South Carolina, and Central Michigan. The bottom 2 teams, I would be shocked if their coach still has a job come May. Um, South Carolina, a team that has struggled in the SEC for a while now, outside of some glimpses of a tournament run, I believe 3 years ago under Lamont Paris. And then almost 10 years ago, they made the Final Four with Frank Martin. So, I mean, there's been flashes in the pan there, but outside of those, not great teams. And then Charlotte, unfortunately, just cannot get anything going athletics wise. They are a very Jekyll and Hyde American Conference team, which is not something that you want to be, considering in our conference they are now in the bottom 3, and Central Michigan. Central Michigan. Is there anything here, I guess, or in the standings as a whole, I mean, you also, outside of our top three, you have UCF and St. Louis, a fringe top 25 team and another top 25 team looming right behind this group. Are there any surprises right now, or would you say that the standings and the criteria point system is kind of lining up how you would expect for these teams?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm too shocked at kind of how it's shaked out or shaken out for our top five so far. Um, like you said, UCF St. Louis rounding it out. I would say UCF maybe is like a bit of a surprise, given that they don't have a ton of basketball pedigree as a school. They did have that run with Taco Fall that everybody remembers, the Zion game that came down to the last second in Columbia, South Carolina, ironically. And I don't know, outside of that, they've had some decent teams that have been close to making a tournament appearance, but just haven't been able to kind of get over that hump. So it's good to see them playing good basketball, competing really well in the Big 12. Like they beat Kansas this year. They had a big win against Houston over the weekend. So,
Or Texas Tech?
or sorry, Texas Tech. Yep, getting ahead of myself. Houston's tonight. um, so it's good to see the program take these strides and kind of like reassert itself in this fairly wide open landscape of college basketball right now.
Yeah, that's kind of my only surprise too, is just where UCF is, being directly behind Florida in this case. They are ahead of obviously a well-known and very good St. Louis team. They're number 19 in the country. They have only one loss. And a very good New Mexico basketball team who has been good now for a few years running. And this UCF team obviously being unranked currently. We'll see what they do tonight against Houston. But I mean, they have a couple top 25 wins, as you discussed. If they can beat Houston on the road tonight, you never know. Could be back in a top 25 situation and be looking at possibly a top 4 seed for the Knights, which would be incredible with, like you say, the track record of this program over,
Yeah.
past 2 decades, let's say. We'll slide over to the women now. Our top three over there, and the start should be no surprise. South Carolina and Duke are number 1 and 2, and then Washington. Washington has had a very good season on the women's side of the ball. This should not shadow the men. The men have actually played pretty decent with what they had going into the season. Just Big Ten play on the men's side has been killing them. But the women, very good stretch right here. They have Ohio State tomorrow at home, which will be a great test. And if they can pull that win off, really solidify the Huskies on having a great season and potentially a good tournament run later on. Our bottom three is unfortunately very disappointing, as I would consider these to be basketball programs, especially 2 of them, Providence, St. Louis, and Florida State. Florida State basketball, they just missed the bottom 3 for the men's side of things. They were in the bottom 3 just a few weeks ago. St. Louis women, they've never really taken the shape of the men's counterpart program. So it's not shocking the women's program is down. However, when you think of St. Louis, you think of good basketball. Just the women have not been able to do it. And then Providence, just all around rough year for the athletics department over there.
Hey. PC hockey's number 7 in the country. Got to plug Friar Hockey. If
Frozen Four is going to be big in a few weeks.
Yeah,
We will be
I
covering
mean they're on a roll right now. They've swept BU and BC back to back weekends. Watch out. That's all I'm saying.
But yeah, so nothing, I guess, surprising in that regard outside of just Providence being this low on the list. Anything from the women's side of the ball? Iowa State obviously taking that 5-game losing streak, dropping out of the top 3 on the women's side of things, which was a little concerning. They got their feet back under them, and it looks like they're playing good basketball again. I don't really think that is it was kind of a alarm for the Cyclones, but the way that they landed, I would say that, it's don't call off the season. There's still a lot left to play for. And in that Big 12, they are probably still the best team in that conference.
Yeah.
So I would not be surprised to see an Iowa State jump back and kind of play around in the top three area once again. I mean, they're number 5 right now, I do believe,
maybe
on
even
the
4.
women's side. They are number 4, actually. They
Yeah.
are a few spots. And then Notre Dame hot on their tails. Definitely not where we want to see Notre Dame women's basketball either, but they're not falling as hard as some of these other teams. The parachute is at least deployed for the Irish, and they have uh, a decent schedule remaining, so they can
Mm-hmm.
get some top 25 wins, quad 2, quad 1 victories. I believe they have number 6 Louisville tomorrow, which is
Should
an
be a big
immediate
game.
resume
Yeah.
boost. So that could be great for the Irish. Um, any other notes you want to say on our PAC-South standings for the women's side?
No, I think you covered it there. I was going to say it's a little surprising, as you mentioned, to see Notre Dame women's basketball be that low.
Mhm.
This has become a pretty good program over the years, and especially with Hannah Hidalgo coming back this year, I think there was pretty decent expectations surrounding Irish women's basketball. Obviously, a bit of an up and down start, but like you said, it seems like it's kind of rounding into form. Of course, if they go on a run and win the ACC, then they rocket up the standings. So, still some time to play things out a little bit.
Indeed, indeed. All right, we will hop into our predictions after a very weird kind of episode or two for PAC South with no predictions. They are back. And we're going to hop right into a great one. We have Duke, UNC, arguably the best rivalry in college basketball, if not the best, obviously up there on Mount Rushmore. Um, I don't know what I can't say about this Duke team that a lot of other people haven't already
Yeah.
said. To me, this feels like Duke of old, that even when Coach K was there, it was toward the end, you're kind of like, Duke doesn't really have it. Like, they're still good. They're still Duke. They're still ranked. But there's just something missing. To me, this Duke team, I mean, they're scoring a lot of points. Defensively, you could argue that this is some of the best basketball on that side of the ball they've played in a long, long time. Um, I'm very excited to watch this Duke team, but also concerned. So I still don't really want to watch them win another another tournament. On the other side of the ball, UNC obviously they had a much harder transition. Roy Williams leaving. Now they've kind of figured it out. Last year they kind of like first year I was like, okay, UNC they might be playing good ball again, and then this year currently 4 losses, number 14 in the country, with some good results in there as well, but I just don't know if this is enough. Duke is in great form right now. I believe the closest game that they have played recently was 14 points on the road. Obviously, still win. Everything else is an average of, I think, 24-point margin, dating back to, I think, January 5th. So, I mean, they are just beating the brakes off of everyone. Obviously, this is the biggest matchup over that span, but I still like Duke to get it done on the road. And this will be an entertaining game. This will be a great game.
For sure. I'm with you on the results. I think that, I don't know, this was definitely a must compete at a high level season for Hubie Davis at UNC this year. Obviously, he had the success in his first year, making that Final Four run, um, making the national championship game, ultimately just to lose, but hasn't really been able to find it since then. And it seems like his recruiting is finally catching up to like on court performance this year, where Carolina's back in a good position, back in a good spot in the ACC, beating the teams they're supposed to, not sort of rolling over for those like mid level ACC opponents like we had seen on occasion the past 2 years. However, kind of like you said, this Duke team just feels like a different beast or a different animal. It is kind of crazy that Duke hasn't won a natty since, I think that was 2015. Um, yeah, yeah, 2015 is the last time.
I think,
And
yeah.
you think of Duke basketball, they're always good, they're always there. They've had deep runs. They made the Final Four, Coach K's last year. They made the Elite Eight the past few seasons, but they just can't seem to get over the hump or get over the finish line and win the national championship. Uh, I don't know. Cameron Boozer's just something different, man. The way he plays basketball is so fun to watch. Obviously, some of his games not going to translate perfectly to the NBA, where other people might be as athletic or slightly more athletic than him. But for college basketball, he's such an exciting player, and I don't know. You just have to love the way him and Isaiah Evans have been playing together this year. With Slim deciding to come back, do his sophomore year at Duke, trust in Coach Shire, and it's really seemed to pay off for him. So yeah, I got Duke beating the Tar Heels up at the Dean Dome.
Love it. All right, so another Saturday matchup, and we could just as well have talked about their matchup this evening on Wednesday, but we are doing the Saturday matchup. We have Houston versus BYU. Houston obviously playing UCF tonight, and what could be a trap game for them. Looking ahead to this matchup, um, big road test for the Cougars. Obviously, they've already been tested. They've looked good. I mean, this Houston team just seems to be consistent year in and year out now. But now BYU, I mean, every now and then it seems like they might take a little step back. But I mean, this is typically a scary team to have come up on your schedule. They don't really do anything perfect, but they're scrappy and they get things done and they score a lot of points. I think this is going to be a massive test for the Cougars. But I mean, that freshman Kingston Fleming, he's going to be a star. If I'm going to assume Houston is going to be able to retain them with the kind of basketball program that they have. So I mean, he's a great building piece to have in that locker room. I think that he's going to be kind of the difference, and I'm anticipating him having a good game and kind of pushing them over the edge. But I mean, he's shooting over 50% on the season. I mean, the kid is phenomenal to watch. So I like Fleming to have a big game over the Cougars and leading the Cougars to the win.
Yeah, I'm gonna go against you here on this one. So this one's in
Okay.
Provo. So I feel like that kind of plays a little bit of a role here. BYU's always a tough place to win. Um, I don't know. I like the way Houston plays basketball. Obviously, they're a very good team, but it seems like they're missing something from those past Houston teams where they just had so much energy and such a high motor on the glass and on defense. They're not rebounding at the same rate that they were last year. I don't think they have anybody in double figures this year for rebounding averages. And I know that BYU has struggled against, let's say, like strong defensive teams or like hyper athletic teams. But I think the second half against Kansas just kind of proved how good of a team this is when everything's clicking. You know what I mean? It's not just AJ Jabonsa. It's also Richie Saunders. It's also Rob Wright III. And they just put up so many points. Like this is a hard team to guard for 40 minutes straight and not let your guard down and not let them sort of get one over on you. So I agree, Kingston Flemings is a heck of a player, but I'm going with the home Cougs here in BYU.
All right. We will now move to Sunday with a women's matchup. We have number 2 UCLA, number 8 Michigan, a very high profile Big Ten matchup here. UCLA has been a very good team the last 2 seasons. Marquee win last year against South Carolina. They've had big matchups already this year. They're only lost to, I believe it's number 3 Texas, so directly behind them. Um, Obviously, this Michigan team, very good. They have the home court here. I think that it's going to get down to like the nitty gritty with this team, with this game. I think both teams have decent shooters, but it's all about the down low. UCLA is going to out rebound. Like Lauren Betts is averaging 3+ rebounds just on her own on the offensive side of the ball. I think that is massive for second chance points in a game that can be hit or miss in just field shooting. Being able to get those low boards and then put them back up and have those chances, I think is going to be what sets UCLA over the Wolverines. So I like the road team again. So I'm 3 in a row for the road team. I like the Bruins.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Bruins as well here. They're kind of just on fire ever since they lost to Texas fairly early into the season in a non-conf matchup. And I don't know. I feel like they're just playing solid basketball right now. As you mentioned, Lauren Betts is one of the best players in all of women's college basketball, not to mention the Big Ten. And oh shoot, I don't know her first name. I'm going to be honest, hand up here. But Rice, she's a guard for them. Um, I forget her first name. Sorry, but she's a heck of a player as well. The few times that I've tuned in and I've seen UCLA women's basketball playing, she's quick, she's explosive, and she's able to not just score but obviously generate plays for her teammates. And that's something that you need to do against a fellow top five ish opponent in Michigan. So I like UCLA here for the reasons you mentioned, and just because they're playing some really good basketball, and it seems like they're gelling at the right time.
Okay. We love road teams outside of BYU. We'll see if that continues here. With UConn going on the road to the Fighting Johnnies, St. John's, they are back in the top 25 here. I think this has been a fun team to follow with Rick Pitino's kind of like resurgence as a coach after everything with what he did at Northern Iowa and then now going to St. John's and going to the tournament last year and them still being a very great program this season. 5 losses though, they're not perfect. UConn coming into this 22-1.
Yeah.
Do they have a game before? Do they have a game today? No.
No.
So this is their next matchup. So Friday. But I do have to say, ever since last year, this is not the UConn that went back to back. Yes, they have one loss. I'm still not sold on this team. They are very good. I think that they have gotten by with what they need to do. They don't really have anyone that stands out, which is not necessarily a bad thing. In basketball, you're playing just team ball at this point for the Huskies. But I think that they're going to need a big game out of someone to get it done in New York. And I'm pretty sure every single time that on the podcast we have picked a St. John's game, I have gone with St. John's. And I'm not leaving the Storm. I'm still sticking with St. John's. I just like them. I like the home court. I like Rick Pitino as a coach. I think that UConn is a little bit of a fraud for where they are right now. Not saying they're bad. They're still a very good team. They still have a great chance to make a Sweet 16 or even an Elite 8. I don't like them for the Natty. I hate this ranking for them. I hate their record. It will come out in this game.
My feelings on this game are this. If St. John's was anywhere except New York City, I feel like the home court advantage of playing a top 25 team would be massive, and it'd be like a really tough atmosphere for UConn to get it going. But unfortunately for St. John's, Madison Square Garden kind of turns into Stores South when UConn comes to town because of how many alumni they have in the area, because it is such a quick drive from Connecticut to New York City. And that kind of negates some of that home court advantage a little bit. St. John's
Hey, Rangers stink this year. They need to cheer for something in that city.
St. John's has definitely turned their season around. It was a little shaky in non-conf, obviously losing to Providence College, their only conference loss so far. We'll say decently early into the conference schedule, right? Like in early January. But I don't know. They're just kind of a perplexing team, I feel like, because Zuby Ejiofor obviously is fantastic. He was picked as the Big East preseason player of the year. Bryce Hopkins had a phenomenal 1 year at Providence, was playing great before he blew his knee out. And then he's kind of been up and down since transferring to St. John's. Didn't really perform much at all or very well for Providence when he did play last year. So I don't know. I feel like this UConn team is hungry and they want to prove something. You know, I think the narrative in the national media kind of is what you were saying, you know, that, yeah, it's a good team, but I don't think this is the UConn teams that had, you know, Steph Castle and Donovan Clingan and guys like that on it. You know, like Solo Ball's all right, but he's not as good as those guys. Or, you know, Caravan's just kind of hanging around because he's not a next level guy. things like that. I feel like Dan Hurley uses those statements and uses those things to motivate his team, make sure that they're still playing at a high level. And for that reason, I'm going with the Huskies. As much as it pains me to pick UConn for anything, I'm going with the Huskies here.
Okay, so we both 3-1 for the road teams. We'll see how that goes for us. It's
Yeah,
not the best trend, in college basketball, especially for weekend games. Now, if we were picking weeknight games, it might be a little bit
a
more
little
favorable.
different. Yeah.
But kind of weird matchups here. But we love our road teams. Our final matchup, our PAC-South game of the week, is sure to be a great game. I'm very excited to watch this one. We have number 5 Illinois taking on number 10 Sparty. This obviously being in East Lansing, I think that helps with the uh, competitiveness of this game. I think that this kind of evens whatever bit of tilting the court may have. But I'll give credit to Michigan State. They are playing very good basketball this year. But I think this Illinois team is dangerous. I can't even beat around the bush of how much I think this team is good. I like them winning this game. I think this could still be a 10-point game, but lots of back and forth, especially in the first half. But this team is dangerous. I've watched them play live in person. Um, you're kind of like, man, both teams are really kind of like sticking in it. Like, yeah, like it's an 8-point game, and there's a run, and it's a 2-point game, but Illinois never really loses control. They're still in that driver's seat the whole time. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, I'm done playing around with this. And they take off. They just take control of the game that they should. Even the games that they were playing like higher quality opponents, like 2 of their last 3 games, their home game, they played Washington. Washington, not the best in results, but they have played teams close. Like they played a very good Michigan team close for about, 36 minutes. Then all of a sudden they decided they're tired. Kind of same thing with Illinois. Illinois continues that same thing. So, I mean, you're looking at 2 of the top teams in the Big Ten. Other 2 games on that, they had 2 road games. They play a 1-loss Nebraska team that they beat by 9, and they play a very good Purdue team on the road that they beat by 6. So, I mean, they are in great form right now, and it's not just they're winning the games that they need to. They're winning the games that are, hey, we are very good. Like this isn't like last year when they still were very good, but they probably would have dropped one of those matchups. Or maybe Washington, it's kind of ugly and it goes to overtime. This team is good. I love this team, unfortunately. To be a Final Four team in my book, long-winded way of saying Illini are winning.
Dang. Okay. I'm
I
going
don't know if I
against
got my
you.
point across.
I do agree that Illinois is a very good basketball team. Keaton Wagler's kind of nuts for a freshman. I think he's definitely going to be a top pick in the upcoming drafts. And obviously, Mirkovic is there, Andrei Stojakovic. Like, this is a really good team and a really surprisingly athletic team. Like, I don't think if you haven't watched a ton of Illinois basketball this year, you kind of just like look over their roster, and some of the names, like especially the fact that some of these guys are like upperclassmen and aren't like true freshmen, right? Like you wouldn't expect them to play with such explosiveness. But they really are a super entertaining, super exciting team to watch. They've got great guard play. They've got great front court play. I don't know. They're just overall a very good team. However, like you said, it's in East Lansing. It's at the Breslin Center, one of the toughest places to play. I'm sure that place is going to be rocking for this game. And Jeremy Fears is, in my opinion, one of like the most underrated players in all of college basketball. You don't really hear about him a ton. I know he's not averaging a ton of points. I think he's somewhere in like the 14-ish range probably. But he's or he was. I don't know if he still is. He was leading all of college basketball in assists per game. I think he was at like 9.8 or 9.7 earlier this year. So he's a fantastic player. Jackson Kohler is a really underrated big who can stretch the floor a little bit where necessary. And I don't know. I'm just a big Tom Izzo believer. Never count his teams out. He's a fantastic coach. And for those reasons, I'm going with Sparty here.
Okay, a nice split to end off our picks and our game of the week. Um, this should be a very fun weekend of basketball. Not a billion great matchups across the board, but the matchups that are very good this weekend. So we will be able to sit down for 3-4 hours on Saturday and Sunday and get good basketball. So very much looking forward to that. Last episode, I did say we will talk about baseball. That will actually be next week, as the following Friday is going to be opening day for a lot of teams and a lot of the early season tournaments. So we will go over that next Wednesday/Thursday. And apparently we have not calculated our bowl season projections or prediction results. So that will also come next episode as well. A smooth month after the national championship. So we will see who actually is able to pick the games that matter at the end of the season. Nonetheless, thank you all so much for listening, watching, wherever you are consuming the PAC-South podcast. We really appreciate it. And we will see you all again next week. More college basketball and college baseball right around the corner. See you guys.